Visions of Mana is shaping up to be an absolutely amazing game, and the other day Square Enix dropped a demo for it seemingly out of nowhere. I recently spent 2 hours playing through it, doing absolutely everything the game had to offer in this demo. So in this video, I'll be sharing with you what you can expect from the demo and my overall thoughts on the game. And spoiler alert, this game is shaping up to be absolutely incredible. So the demo starts you off somewhere early in the game because you have 3 party members, and it'll introduce you to the game's mechanics, everything from your gear, the elements, and combat. Now when the game opens, you'll start off in a very linear snow area, but then it opens up into a bigger field area where you can explore and take on side quests. Ultimately, you're trying to get to this town at the very end of the field. There you can pick up more side quests and then eventually take on a boss fight before it's over. Now it took me about 2 hours, but again, I did absolutely everything, every single side quest, every little optional mini boss. I tried to collect everything, but if you wanted to just blast through it, you could easily do it in probably an hour or less. Now, let me tell you about what I liked about this demo. Right off the bat, it's absolutely stunning. It doesn't even compare to the trailers. Like, you might look at it and think, yeah, it looks pretty nice, but when you see the game in motion on your own screen, it'll just blow you away. Now, for me, I was playing on PlayStation 5 and it ran at a pretty smooth 60 frames per second, never really had any hitches. And those colors, man, those colors are so vibrant, so saturated. You know, the Mana series is always known for their kind of like saturated pastel art style, and it just looks incredible in this more open area style. Now, I wouldn't call it open world because there is some loading in between like towns and different zones, but the bigger, more open zones are sizable and very big. Now, I will say the cutscenes are in 30 frames per second, but that's okay. It doesn't take away from the beauty and the production value of this game. And you pair that all together with some gorgeous music that you're probably listening to right now, and it's just perfect. The game has an incredible atmosphere just running around this gorgeous world paired with this incredible music, and it just feels like a good old classic adventure. And that's honestly why I play JRPGs, for this grand sense of adventure, and I really got that here in Visions of Mana. Now, gameplay wise, there's a lot going on, and I will say that this demo doesn't have a great onboarding process. It just throws a lot of splash screens in front of you where it'll tell you all the controls and tries to explain everything very quickly. However, I imagine in the full game this will be a much more natural process, so I'm not going to hold that against the game. I'm expecting it to be much better in the full release. So the first area you go to is the Rime Falls. It's the snowy area, and one of the first things it introduces you to is the elemental mechanics. And so one of the ones that you have seems to do with time, and so you're trying to cross this big icy river, but if you do that, you'll take damage, so you need to hop across these kind of ice bridges, but they go by too fast, so you have to slow them down. And you can double jump and air dash, so platforming across everything felt really fun. And then you'll get a brief glimpse of combat before you jump into the fallow steppe, the bigger open field area where most of the demo takes place. Now, very early on here, you're given an item that lets you call in a pakul, basically a big wolf dog looking mount thing. And you could ride it and it makes things much faster. You could just kind of blast through enemies. You don't even have to fight them. But for me personally, I actually enjoy exploring on foot. It just makes it feel more like an adventure, and you can get into all the little nitty gritty cracks and all the different parts of the environment. So I really enjoy just kind of running around on foot. And as you explore, there's so much to find. You have treasures, mini bosses, this sort of orange syrup that's absolutely everywhere. You can trade it in later once you get to the town. The one thing that I found kind of odd but didn't really mind was that most of the collectibles are marked on the map by default, these little blue circles. It kind of ruins the joy of discovery while you're exploring, but I guess I didn't really mind as I was playing. And I have to say that exploring is my favorite thing to do in games, especially in RPGs, and it just felt so satisfying here. There are so many little areas in the field area, like a waterfall or a farm to explore, where you can find treasures and other items. It's not just a big empty world, but there's stuff absolutely littered everywhere. And there's a shocking amount of platforming here. Like I said earlier, you can double jump, you can air dash, and it was just so much fun to see items and think, okay, how do I get up there? How do I use the environment to my advantage to double jump, to climb up there and get the item that's teasing me? And what's cool is there's no fall damage, so if you climb up something high and jump down, you're not gonna have to worry about taking damage. Now, the elements play a huge role in the game, everything from how you attack and how you interact with the environment. First of all, there's something called elementites scattered throughout this field, and you can activate them, and they sort of serve as collectibles in the area, but then also you can warp between them. There's also little active points of interest where you can use your time element to rewind time, because you'll find treasure chests that have been opened already, but then you can rewind to before they got open. I thought that was really clever. There's also also bursts of wind where you can kind of get launched up into the air. Now, clearly I didn't have all the elements because there were areas where you're very obviously meant to use your elements, but there was nothing I could use to activate them. So I imagine in the full game, you'll be able to come back later and activate them. Now let's talk about the elemental plots. Those are things that you can basically equip to your character, and depending on which character you equip them to, it can change their class, everything from how they look to the different weapons you can use. And I would highly encourage you to experiment with this in the demo, because at first I was kind of just using the base setup, but then I changed Karina's elemental plot and she got these fans and she started attacking much faster, and for me she was just so much more fun to fight with. And speaking of which, let's dive into combat. So like I said earlier, the demo only includes 3 playable characters: Val, Karina, and Morley, and you can swap between them on the fly and they all play super different. Val kind of has like a big two-handed sword. He's a lot slower but hits harder. Karina uses a spear, but then if you switch out her class, she can use these fans. And then Morley is a much faster close-up brawler. Now, as far as your arsenal goes, you have basic attacks, heavy attacks, and then you can also equip elemental abilities that use MP. These can be everything from buffing up your attack, healing, or just doing damage. And there's also a meter that will fill up, and if you unleash it, you can do a big super move. Now, something I found unique about this game is that one of the main characters, Hina, is not actually a core party member that you can control. However, she's always off to the side healing you. At first, I felt like the game was a little easy because of this, because you didn't really have to focus on using items and healing as much. However, when I got to some of the tougher boss fights, I actually had to use items, so it's not that big of a deal, but it kind of just makes the trash enemies a little bit more tolerable as you're exploring the world. And there was a boss at the end, this sort of octopus character, and it was super fun. You have to dodge these telegraphed attacks. You have to kind of dodge these water balls that it shoots out at you. However, there was one part where the game kind of glitched out. He does this move where he tips the ship you're on kind of upside down and you just fall through the floor, and it had to reset. Thankfully, the game didn't crash, but this is something that I hope they patch before the final release. Overall, I really enjoyed this demo for Visions of Mana. It does so many little things right, from your equipment and combat and the variety of activities you can do, but then also just these little things, like for example, this vaulting animation. You totally didn't need to include that. It doesn't add anything to the game really, but it's a nice little touch and just made me smile. And Visions of Mana is now easily my most anticipated game for the rest of the year. Yes, even above Metaphor ReFantasio. Now, the demo isn't without its flaws, so let me tell you what I didn't like. I played it on PlayStation, and I don't know what they were thinking when they did this, but every little sound effect plays twice, both on your TV and then through the controller. At first, I thought I was doing something wrong, but then I noticed it was coming from the controller, and it was an absolutely baffling design decision to do this. It was so annoying, and it was the first thing I wanted to turn off when I booted up the demo. Thankfully, you can mute the sound from the PS5 menu system, but whoever thought this was a good idea, they should just remove it because it's incredibly annoying. Now, here's the big one. I felt like everything in the game was just a little bit too slow. Attacks felt kind of clunky and a little too slow. Spells felt like they took a little too long to cast. Dismounting the Pakul felt a little too slow. So I'm not sure if this is just because I'm coming off of playing other action RPGs that are faster, but this just felt slow. And I'm not the only one who thought this. I saw a lot of people complaining about this both on my Discord and over on Twitter, so I'll be curious if this is something they adjust before launch. And there were also some things that just didn't get explained very well. For example, there's elementites scattered throughout the world that I couldn't activate, and it didn't really explain why. I assume it has something to do with not having the required elements, but I'm not sure, I'm just guessing. So I'm hoping that they will properly explain this once the full game releases. And like I said earlier, the onboarding was pretty bad, and I'm not going to hold it against them because it is a demo and they're probably just trying to throw a lot of information at you at once, whereas in the full game, it'll probably be explained to you at a much more balanced pace. Now, unfortunately, we're going to have to wait about a month to play the full game, but if you want to hear about an amazing action JRPG that you can play right now, be sure to check out my review for Tokyo Xanadu on Nintendo Switch. It's a criminally underrated game, one of my favorite JRPGs of all time, and I think you'll love it.